Hello everybody and welcome to this video, the continued translation of Much Ado About Nothing into modern English. Everything I say in this video comes from Mr. Bruff's Guide to Much Ado About Nothing, available for £3.99 at mrbruff.com. So we're into Act 2, Scene 1, a hall in Leonato's house, and enter Leonato, Antonio, Hero, Beatrice and others. And I'll translate each scene. Each line. Leonato asks, "Was not Count John here at supper?" In other words, wasn't Don John here for dinner? Antonio says, "I saw him not. I didn't see him." Beatrice says, "How tartly that gentleman looks. I never can see him, but I am heartburned an hour after." Always one with the wordplay, Beatrice. What she's really saying is that, he looks so sour, I can't even look at him without getting heartburn. And Hero says he is of a very melancholy disposition. In other words, he's a really misery guts guy to look at. And Beatrice then replies to that, "He were an excellent man that were made just in the midway between him and Benedick. The one is too like an image and says nothing, and the other too like my lady's eldest son, evermore tattling." So what she's saying here, and this is something we often miss, I think, when we're studying this in class, maybe when we're watching the film version. But what she's saying is, what you want is somebody halfway between Don John and Benedick. One of them's more like a picture of a man who never speaks, and the other's like a spoilt brat who never stops babbling. So here, immediately, we see some positivity towards Benedick that we often don't realise is there. And after that, Leonato says, "Then half Signor Benedick's tongue in Count John's mouth, and half Count John's melancholy in Signor Benedick's face." In other words, so the idea being that he's saying, well, he'd talk only half as much as Benedick and be only half as serious as Don John if we took half of each. Beatrice says, "With a good leg and a good foot, uncle, and money enough in his purse, such a man would win any woman in the world if he could get her good will." So in other words, if he was a good dancer and he had plenty of money, that's the kind of man that could have any woman he wanted, if she just liked him a little bit. And Leonato says, "By my troth, niece, thou wilt never get thee a husband if thou be so shrewd of thy tongue." In other words, listen, niece, you'll never get a husband if you keep saying such nasty things about people. And Antonio says, "In faith, she's too cursed. It's true. She's too bad-tempered." And Beatrice replies, "Too cursed is more than cursed. I shall lessen God's sending that way. For it is said, God sends a cursed cow short horns, but to a cow too cursed he sends none." So more wordplay, and really more of Shakespeare's showing off his kind of wordplay and use of language. But what's really being said here is, is too bad-tempered worse than bad-tempered? So if, as the proverb says, God gives a bad-tempered cow short horns so it can do less damage, surely he gives a too bad-tempered cow no horns at all. Just sort of talking in riddles, really, in this humorous moment. And Leonato says, "You may light on a husband that hath no beard." In other words, what he's saying here is, hang on, did I miss a bit? Sorry. Yeah. Leonato says, "So by being too cursed, God will send you no horns." In other words, what Leonato is saying here, God will give you no horns so you can do less damage. Beatrice says, "Just if he send me no husband, for the which blessing I am at him upon my knees every morning and evening. Lord, I could not endure a husband with a beard on his face. I'd rather lie in the woolen." In other words, precisely. Indeed, I pray every morning and evening that God won't give me a husband. I couldn't stand a husband with a beard. I'd rather sleep in itchy blankets all night. And Leonato says, "You may light on a husband that hath no beard." In other words, well, maybe you'll find a husband who doesn't have a beard. And Beatrice says something I've always loved as a bearded man myself. "What should I do with him? Dress him in my apparel and make him my waiting gentlewoman? He that hath a beard is more than a youth, and he that hath no beard is less than a man. And he that is more than a youth is not for me, and he that is less than a man, I am not for him. Therefore I will even take sixpence in earnest of the bear ward, and lead his apes into hell." So what's this saying then? Well, what should I do with a husband like that? Should I dress him in my clothes and make him my maid? If he's got a beard, he's more than a boy, and if he hasn't, he's less than a man. But if he's more than a boy, he's not my type, and if he's less than a man, I'm not his type. So it looks like I'm going to suffer the fate of an unmarried woman, as the saying goes, and lead the apes to hell. And Leonardo asks, well then, go you into hell? In other words, so you're going to hell then? And Beatrice replies, no, but to the gate. And there will the devil meet me like an old cuckold with horns on his head, and say, get you to heaven, Beatrice, get you to heaven. Here's no place for you, maids. So deliver I up my apes, and away to St. Peter for the heavens. He shows me where the bachelors sit, and there live we as merry as the day is long. In other words, no, I won't go into hell, I'll just go to the gate, where I'll be met by the devil with horns on his head like a cuckold, and he'll say, go off to heaven, Beatrice, we don't take virgins here. So I'll deliver my apes and go off to heaven to find St. Peter, and he'll show me where all the bachelors hang out, and we'll all live happily ever after. Then Antonio starts to speak to Hero. Well, niece, I trust you will be ruled by your father. So changing the subject to the suggested marriage. I trust my niece that you'll do what your father says. But Beatrice jumps in here again, dominating the conversation. Yes, Faith, it is my cousin's duty to make curtsy and say, Father, as it pleases you. But yet for all that, cousin, let him be a handsome fellow, or else make another curtsy and say, Father, as it pleases me. Interesting contextual detail here about parent-child relationships, the role of the father making the choices for his daughter's marriage, etc. Beatrice is saying, it's my cousin's duty to say, as you wish, Dad. But all the same, if her dad's choice of husband isn't handsome, she should politely say, no, I don't want this. Leonardo says, well, I hope to see you one day fitted with a husband. In other words, I hope one day you'll get married. And Beatrice says, not till God make men of some other metal than earth. Would it not grieve a woman to be overmastered with a piece of valiant dust, to make an account of her life to a clod of wayward marl? No, uncle, I'll none. Adam's sons are my brethren, and truly I hold it a sin to match in my kindred. In other words, I'm not going to get married until God makes men out of something better than dust, like it says in the Bible. I just won't do it. What woman would want to be ruled over by a handful of dust, to answer a lump of clay? No, uncle, it's not for me. And anyway, if Adam is the father of all mankind, then his sons are my brothers, and surely marrying your own brother is wrong. So we see established the wit and intelligence of Beatrice, more than anything here. As well as the fact that she defiantly doesn't want to get married. Leonardo, daughter, remember what I told you. If the prince do solicit you in that kind, you know your answer. So in other words, he's saying, look, Hero, if the prince asks you to marry him, you know what to say. So there's a misunderstanding here, thinking perhaps that the prince is going to ask for the marriage. And then Beatrice gives quite a long speech. The fault will be in the music, cousin, if you be not wooed in good time. If the prince be too important, tell him there is measure in everything, and so dance out the answer. For hear me, Hero, wooing, wedding, and repenting is such a Scotch jig, a measure, a sync pace. The first suit is hot and hasty like a Scotch jig, and full as fantastical. The wedding, mannerly modest as a measure, full of state and ancientry. And then comes repentance, and with his bad legs falls in the sync pace fast and faster, till he sink into his grave. More wordplay from Beatrice, who really says, well, make sure the prince wants and woos you properly. If he tries to rush you, tell him that he must see courting as a sort of dance. Listen carefully to me, Hero. There are 3 stages in a relationship, and they are each like different dances. The wooing is hot and hasty and breathless like a Scottish jig. Just as hasty and just as full of wild ideas is the wedding. And then the wedding is a stately dance full of old-fashioned formality. And then you come to the bit where you regret getting married, which is like a 5-step capering dance that whirls you round faster and faster until you collapse and die. Leonardo, cousin, you apprehend passing shrewdly. In other words, you're very perceptive. Beatrice, I have a good eye, uncle. I can see a church by daylight. In other words, I can see what is plain to see, what is obvious. Leonardo, the revellers are entering. Brother, make good room. and all put on their masks. So the party goers are arriving and they put on their masks, and we remember that this is the masked ball, and it's important to have a masked ball. I'll continue with the translation in the next video.